like a pretty loud family, so I can't imagine myself being able to concentrate on online courses. And I know that there's like a lot of people who have similar living situations where they have children and it wouldn't be feasible for classes to be online. Um, yeah, so I also think another concern that's been coming up for a lot of people is this idea of having to move across the country or to a different like area, and some people are moving out for the first time and we already like have anxieties about how to go about that. But then with the recent situation that's going on, you don't know if you go into a rent, like you agree to rent somewhere and then in September classes end up being online. So how would you think that students should approach moving out and stuff?
Yeah, I would hold off on making a decision and hold off on putting down a
Hmm.
non-refundable security deposit if you're going
Right.
to be locked into that. It's a tricky situation. And you could have clauses in there regarding what happens if classes are not offered in person or you have a medical condition that prevents you from going in person. I think some landlords might not be that understanding or be able to offer that much flexibility. So if dorming
Hmm.
is an option, universities might be a better option because at least that would be tied to whether classes are on campus or not. But yeah, it's an
Yeah.
open question, not a lot of easy answers.
I know that makes sense because a lot of leases are starting in May or September, and like you can't even go to the city to, see what the place looks like. So it's really a huge unknown. And what accommodations do you see like law schools giving students that are going into 1L and maybe might not have like the same experience that they would have if the situation was normal?
Well, in terms of accommodations, what exactly do you mean?
Um, so let's say classes go online, like would they record the lectures or you know what I mean? Like what sort of I've heard of like with exams, there's been pass and fail exams. So I'm thinking in terms of academia, what supports profs would give or what supports would the universities give.
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think
Hmm.
that they are likely to record all the classes. If they're being run online, then it's very easy to record them. It's built into the software, like Zoom, for example. Other softwares offer similar recording options. I would imagine they would record them just for those who can't make it, since it is built in and relatively easy. And if classes are offered in person, there might still be a way for universities to record them for later archiving for those who couldn't make it for whatever reason. There might be a situation where some students are in person and others are online. And it might be live online for the others, it might be recorded online for the others, but I do imagine recordings will exist. That's to me, that's a given.
Right. Do you think it's possible? I read this on a forum somewhere, but people were basically talking about how maybe one or two courses might be in person and the rest might be in a remote situation. Do you think that's like a feasible kind of middle ground for universities to reach when it comes to law school?
That's a tricky one because if you're offering some in
Hmm.
person, why wouldn't you offer all of them in person? Or if you're offering some online, why wouldn't you
Right.
do
That's
all of
what
them
I was
online?
thinking too. Like it just wouldn't make sense,
I could
especially
see
if
it. Go ahead, please.
Sorry, thanks. Especially if like, students are, paying rent and moving all the way to somewhere else. Like it wouldn't make sense for most of your courses to just be online and then going in once or twice a week.
Right, right. I think maybe I
Hmm.
could see a case where larger auditorium style situations, larger classes might be harder to socially distance in those cases. And so maybe for the larger introductory level classes with more students per class, I could see it being difficult to socially distance in those situations. And so universities would either need to offer more sections of that class,
Hmm.
which is more expensive from a labor perspective for the teachers or the professors, but then smaller classrooms like seminars, higher level course with fewer students per class, those might be easier to do in person. But if classes are offered in person, we're going to see extreme social distancing measures like half empty classrooms, every other
Hmm.
seat being empty, masks, quarantines. There might even be things like temperature checks to see if anyone
Oh,
might be sick.
wow.
That's a possibility. I've seen in other countries where
Hmm.
students are wearing masks, like, but not just your regular simple mask, but like a full visor kind of mask
To
to
be able
really,
to go to school. Wow,
yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah, well, universities and dormitories, especially, you have a lot
Mhm.
of people in a tight space where things are not always clean, and so they're really going to have to take a
That's
lot of
true.
measures to make it work.
Yeah. Well, speaking of what you're saying, like given social life and like extracurriculars, how do you think that would look like? Me and my friend were joking that we would have like pub nights over Zoom.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that in 1L, meeting your peers and really connecting with them, and I feel like there's such a huge support system that it would just be weird not having those opportunities to really break the ice with them. So, how do you think that would look like?
Yeah, we're navigating a new situation, and it's hard for me to imagine socializing with
Hmm.
strangers over Zoom for lack of the option of having it in person. So this is really a new frontier. I'm not sure what it'll be like. I could see a lot of extracurriculars still going forward, especially in the law school context, things like
Hmm.
clinics, things like journals, especially journals, given that they're publishing and they want to have a quarterly issue or a semester long issue, whatever, however they run those. And that's pretty easy to navigate over email and online, given that it's text. I could see that running fairly smoothly, but some of the others, it might be a somewhat lackluster experience compared to how it normally is.
Right, right. No, that makes sense. And I've heard like of 1L internships. I know a lot of students don't get them, but some of those have been canceled. And then summer opportunities have been canceled. So how would like a student, if they're trying to, make those networking and job connections, go about it in the situation?
LinkedIn is your friend. LinkedIn, Facebook. I would be doing cold outreach, and doesn't even have to be totally cold. If you're finding
Hmm.
current students who are a few years ahead, or you're finding recent graduates, alumni, that could be an option too. I think if anything, this makes it easier to network because the only option is online. So they're going to be
Right.
more.
Hmm.
They might even be more receptive to it.
That makes sense. And I would also say go on your school website. I used to work for the Career Center at my university, and universities offer so many like on campus jobs or student jobs that I think that they would also have some sort of avenue for online opportunities.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I'm glad you brought that
Hmm.
up. Universities aren't going to this empty. They have plans.
Right.
They're working on this. I'm speaking with university administrators every day about what they're going to be doing, how they're going to navigate this, both from the admissions perspective and then how they're going to run their recruiting, how they're going to run 1L, because students are concerned, and every law school has to figure this out for themselves. And they're obviously coordinating, but
Hmm.
each one's going to be handling it differently. And so for anyone who's hasn't chosen a law school yet, hasn't committed yet, I would talk to the schools and see how they're planning to handle this and go with those who have more appealing plans and more appealing options. But they're going to help with the career stuff. They're also going to help with the extracurriculars. They're going to try and replicate as much as they can. So it may involve new uncharted territory with new styles of meetings, new styles of extracurriculars. But there's going to be a lot of time on Zoom video figuring this out
Right.
and connecting with others to recreate as much of the experience as possible.
And that's the thing. I think it's really reassuring that at least like we're all in this together in a sense, and everyone is working really hard to try and come up with a solution um, for students to have the best experience possible. Um, there are some students though that are considering like deferrals. I've had my friend like text me being like, Shireen, like, should we defer? Like, what's happening? Personally, I wouldn't do it because like taking a year, an extra year would be taking an extra year away from me earning a higher earning potential. But for students who are considering it, and because everyone's situation is different, what would you say to that?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think there's no right answer here. There's definitely pros and cons on each side of this. As you said,
Hmm.
you forego a year of higher earning potential for whatever your situation is now. And for someone graduating college now, they might not have any options for career for the next year and a half or more. So going to law school makes perfect sense. And I think we can expect more students to go to graduate school and law school in particular, as happened in the 2008 financial crisis. We saw a massive spike in applications,
Right.
and that there's a very
Hmm.
good reason for that. What that means, though, is that those applying this coming fall will have likely a more competitive cycle if that is in
Oh,
fact true.
wow.
So if you already
Yeah.
applied and you've got acceptances, it might be harder to go it again for next round as opposed to taking your options this round. At the same time, though, I could see someone not wanting to start 1L given all the uncertainty. But if you choose to go ahead with 1L, it may be less competitive.
That's a really great point. I didn't even like think of it like that. But what about in terms of, just to play devil's advocate a little, what about in terms of tuition? Because law schools are so expensive. My bank account cries just like thinking of
Mm-hmm.
it. In Canada, it ranges from like $20,000 to $40,000. And like, given that it's very likely our experience won't be the same, as like a typical law school experience, what do you think about tuition? Do you think tuition costs will be impacted at all? Or um, how should students like wrap their heads around that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I could see not wanting to pay the entire full price of
Hmm.
tuition for a relatively lower quality experience or an uncertain
Right.
experience. And so I would say tell students, yeah, look for scholarships. Law schools are flexible. They're willing to accommodate.
Hmm.
They've already extended deadlines, and they will extend deposit deadlines even further to help students as they're uncertain about what their futures will be, especially if it involves potentially relocating. So I would talk to law schools, negotiate, but be friendly. Don't act like you have them over a cliff, because while they will be flexible given the circumstances and they are probably a little bit desperate, you
Hmm.
can only push them so far. And so if you can make a reasonable
Right.
argument about why you need discounted tuition, maybe you have other compelling offers, or maybe relocating is more expensive for you, or maybe you've been
Mhm.
personally hit financially because of the job market right now or stay-at-home orders right now. And so if you can make a well-reasoned argument with some specific numbers to back it up, like the cost of relocating, the cost of living in that area, or how you've been personally affected, they're probably going to be willing to work with you to some extent. But I wouldn't aim to
Right.
hammer them to get tuition for a tenth of the price compared to what it normally is.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's not realistic either because you are getting like a really good quality education, whether or not it's online or in person. And I would say, maybe like treating it like you would normally. In Ontario, we have OSAP, which is like financial assistance programs, look into student lines of credit, try to maybe see if you can do an at home job just to save up some money. And in Ontario, they're also doing like benefits for people who had to stop working because of COVID related reasons. So just saving up and like really coming up with a good financial plan just helps people like ease their anxieties a bit, I think also.
And now it can also help you make a more informed decision about what to do in
Hmm.
general, whether to go
Hmm.
or not go now, and also how to decide between different offers. In the US, we also have financial assistance with stimulus packages for those affected by COVID-19. And so that's at least a little bit of money. But also,
Hmm.
another option altogether to get more money from the schools, aside from simply negotiating, is to get a higher LSAT score. They are extending deadlines. You could retake this summer, even if you've already been accepted. You could retake in July, let's say, even to start law school a month or two later with a higher score. They might have
Hmm.
more reason to accept you, to give you more money, because they want to get you at their school to help raise their status in the rankings. At least in the US context, that's especially important. And so that could be an option too.
Oh, that's so interesting. I'm not very like familiar with the US system, so it's always exciting to learn about like how you guys go about things. Um, so I think those were my main like points or like things that I wanted to cover. Was there anything else that you really wanted to talk about in regards to starting 1L online or in person or like uncertainties around it?
Yeah, sure. It's these have been great points, by the way. I think you've hit all the major areas. I don't
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I don't know that there's anything in particular I would add in addition, although I would say talk to the schools. I would emphasize that again. Talk to the schools and see what their plans are.
Hmm.
They're not necessarily going to have a lot of answers, but they are accessible and they can give you some insight into what they're considering and what they're planning for the future. So if you have questions about what are extracurriculars going to be like, what's it going to be like to go to class, I guarantee you they're thinking about this every single day. And they may not have
Hmm.
all the answers, but they've at least got some plans and some ideas. And they're also flexible. So if you can't decide in May and you need until June or July, they could work with you on that. You don't have to make a decision now.
Right. And, it may not be an ideal first year situation. And I think it's important to be sensitive to people's like anxieties around it and recognize like their feelings as valid. But like on a positive note, as future lawyers, I think we're very creative in general, and we always come up with great solutions to persevere in challenging times. And I'm sure, like, for those who are starting 1L, they're going to do the exact same thing, and they're going to still have an amazing law school experience regardless.
Exactly. And you'll still graduate with the same degree at the end of the day. And hopefully this won't go on for too long. So at least second semester 1L or 2L and 3L will hopefully and more likely be relatively more normal experiences.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for having this talk. It was a really great experience. I learned so much. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you as well. And I'll just invite folks watching on your end to come over to my channel, the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel and podcast. I've got plenty of material on both LSAT prep and law school admissions. So, and folks can feel free to reach out to me directly, Steve Schwartz, as well. And I'll be sharing more updates on the LSAT flex changes, law school admissions changes, as well as anything else related to this whole COVID-19 situation. And for folks watching on my end, do you want to share a little bit more about yourself and your channel?
Yeah, for sure. So my channel is called Legally Brunette. I do law-related videos and also a little bit of lifestyle-related videos in the mix. And I would love it if you checked out my channel, and if you like my content, please subscribe.
Awesome. Well, thanks for a great collaboration. Let's keep in touch.
Thank you. Yeah, you too. Bye.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.